You're about to feel what a 600-pound predator feels like against wood. When I stepped onto the muddy edge of the Solimois, I felt the air was as heavy as water. The heat hit my face like an open oven door, and the silence of the shore was so thick you could almost chew it. I didn't come to Brazil to relax. I came to film the kind of story that makes Americans hold their breath and not scroll through their feed. A real encounter with a giant anaconda, the kind that people call a legend until the camera proves its flesh, muscle, and ancient hunger. My name is Jason Reed, 29, former Navy, now the creator of the Survive to Tell channel. The plan was simple, direct, with the perfect hook. An opening shot with a timer on the screen, my voice saying, "If we mess up here, we won't last a minute." And then the truth in 4K, the water rising, the hull creaking, and the whole world watching without blinking. It wasn't a trick. It was urgency designed to hook those living on digital FOMO. My guide, Raphael, looked at me with the face of someone who's seen tourists lose themselves in their own pride. "Here, you don't control time, American. The water does." I only replied that the algorithm told me to start with high tension, then give crumbs of calm, and then blow the first scare when no one expected it. Suspense and curiosity strategy, I learned the hard way. We boarded the Canoe, old wood, narrow hull, small engine. The smell was a mix of sweet gasoline and decaying matter. The Solimois looked like an oil slick, brown and thick, where any shape vanished in 2 seconds. The sound was of an electric world. Insects, leaves, water hitting invisible trunks. I fixed the GoPro to my chest and felt that familiar tingling. My body understands before my mind when a story is about to explode. Raphael cut the engine in a cove of still water. "This is Big Animal's nest," he whispered. I checked the microphone, thought about the visual references that the US audience understands for scale truck tire, beer barrel, because nothing hits the mind as deeply as comparing the unknown with the familiar. In my mental script I already knew, if it appeared I would say, "The diameter of this is a truck tire," and everyone would get it right away. The water made a hollow sound, like someone holding their breath from beneath. I felt the hull give a tiny jump, so light it could have been current. But it wasn't current, it was mass, dense, intelligent. I took a deep breath, opened the GoPro app and let out, "If this goes wrong, we have 60 seconds before we become headline food." It was a line designed to hook the audience with the first sentence, the kind of hook that doesn't let anyone scroll. Raphael told me to shut up with his eyes. He pointed to a half circle of bubbles moving against the drift. Her. I didn't see the head. I saw the skin first. Olive green, almost black, polished like wet rubber. It rose silently, stretching a muscle arc that snapped the water's film. The Solimois split, as if someone ran their palm across a tank of paint. I made the comparison before fear could freeze my mouth. The body is as thick as a truck tire, maybe more. The audience gets it. It gives scale. It brings it home. I also knew that legends exaggerate, that numbers become fantasy, but what I had in front of me had surpassed bad forum photos and viral memes. It was real, heavy, ancient. And even though I knew from research that attacks on humans are rare, that fame is bigger than frequency. My canoe was the worst place for that statistic. "Silence, Jason." Raphael's voice was wind. The arc rose again, now closer. The wood of the canoe made a sound like teeth grinding. The hull didn't vibrate. It creaked from within, like the veins were opening. I started counting without looking at the phone. 60. It was for the video, for me, for the algorithm, and for the bones. 59. I didn't see her face. I saw the world change shape. The weight sank on the left side, slow, methodical, like a hand testing a glass before crushing it. The water rippled. The balance disappeared. 55. My Navy memories kicked in. Distribute mass, lower the center of gravity, eyes on the waterline. Raphael already knew. He leaned his chest against the bench, took the weight off the edge, and with the slightest gesture said, "Don't react like prey." The anaconda didn't attack. She embraced the canoe. First a touch, then a twist of the waist, and then the pressure. The wood responded with a dry crack that I still hear in my teeth. Every fiber of the boat spoke at once. "It's going to break!" 50. The GoPro captured the sound of my own heart, and I thought, If I say, "Don't blink now," half the audience will hold their breath until the end of the segment. 47. It was the number I kept repeating while my arms moved on their own to find the support points. The hull tilted 3 fingers to the left, and I saw a bubble slowly rise, burst, and leave a smell of a river closed for 1,000 years. I knew that a snake like this hunts by constriction, prefers ambushes of the night, but who writes the rules of fear is the wrong minute, in the wrong place. Raphael didn't blink. The rope in his hand looked as thin as hair. If she jumps, she follows. If you hit her, she squeezes. He spoke softly, like someone praying against a storm. 42. The water next to us became a dirty mirror. On the surface, I saw my own face, that of a boy who thought he was clever with a camera and a timer. I understood that a viral story needs something more than shock. It needs truth. And the truth was, I controlled nothing. Her body rose another quarter of the way back. I felt the push on my ankle, cold seeping through boot, sock, bone. 39. I wanted to describe to the audience the feel of her skin, not slippery like old film, but firm, with tiny ridges scraping against the wood, and the sound that isn't water, its soaked rope tightening the board. The hull responded with another louder crack. 35. The algorithm asks for a reveal every 20-30 seconds, and I served. The edge of the canoe went 1 finger deeper into the water. The viewer understands that now it's binary. Either it stabilizes or it flips. 32. I thought about the comments coming. I can't breathe watching this. This feels cursed, or don't blink. I thought about the science snippets saying attacks are rare, and about my body saying this is happening now. 30. Raphael pulled the machete from the sheath and didn't raise it an inch. He just showed the metal to the water, as if conversing with something that understands respect. She feels vibration, he said. She feels fear too. I held my breath, lowered my head, and gave my weight to the center of the boat like wet sand. The next sound I'd never heard in my life. It was like the entire forest had held its breath along with me. The pressure stopped. It didn't lighten, didn't tighten. It stopped. A second that lasted a lifetime. 28. The edge rose half a finger. A trickle of water ran out, gleaming like cold blood. I wanted to tell the camera that the largest anaconda officially recorded is about 8.4 meters and half a ton, that the rest is legend, but at that moment the number didn't matter. What mattered was the math of the hull, weight, angle, pressure. And the question that can't be edited, when a force like this decides if we breathe again. 25. The body retreated an inch. Raphael closed his eyes and said, "Don't celebrate." I didn't celebrate. I heard the hull respond with micro cracks of relief, like a spine returning to place. And it was precisely then, in the quiet miracle, that something touched my heel with the precision of a hand. It wasn't water, it wasn't wood. It was the tip of the tail searching for the edge. 22. The world narrowed until it became the space between my skin and hers. If the tip found leverage, the canoe would flip. I thought of my subscribers, the thumbnail with the countdown, the title promising terror, and understood that the only way for this to be worth it was to get out alive to tell exactly how fear has texture, temperature, and timing. 20. I said almost without air, "Raphael." He didn't answer. He moved the rope like someone moves a water star. No wave, no sound, offering the current a destination. The tail slid, hesitated, and then gave up on the edge with a breath. 19. The body loosened by half a degree. The canoe straightened a finger, and in that tiny space between crushing and letting go, I realized the story I wanted to tell wasn't about a monster, but about the margin, the exact limit where an entire life fits into 60 seconds. 19. The hull breathed like a rib after a punch. The pressure released a little, and by an instinctive mistake, I tried to take too much air. The river entered my nose, smelling like old batteries and rotting leaves. Raphael didn't look at me. He looked at the water as if the water was giving signs. "She wants to feel your panic," he said quietly. "Fear has vibration. I swore I wouldn't give in." 18. The tail brushed the edge again. This time it came by Raphael's feet. He moved his ankle millimeters, an adjustment only someone who lives here understands, to deny leverage. Her skin wasn't smooth. It was like living sandpaper, cold and sticky, leaving a mark on the wood, a dark stripe that looked like oil. I thought about how to describe this to someone watching on a cell phone screen in the subway in New York. It needs to be tactile, almost audible. It needs to be true. 17. The sound changed. It wasn't cracking. It was the creaking of wet rope around a trunk. One more turn. The hull gave a finger's width. I calculated the physics with a former Navy head. Roll angle, center of gravity, moment of inertia. If she gains half another turn, we flip. It's not drama. It's mechanics. 16. I remembered the comments that hold Americans. The don't blink, the I can't breathe, the this feels cursed. I gave them a gift without lying. If another finger of water gets in, there's no turning back. The microphone picked up my voice cleanly. The canoe groaned. A trickle of water moved from the dip into the boat, drawing a cruel S between my boots. 15. Raphael silently mouthed, "Calm." He turned the machete silently and pressed the cold back of the blade against the edge. It wasn't a threat. It was language, a gesture of "I see you" that doesn't provoke. I understood the late ritual. Here, you don't shout at the jungle. You talk to it, to the things that live inside it. 14. The head didn't appear. She worked like heavy water, pressure, leverage, persistence. The part of her body that embraced the hull was too wide for me to embrace alone. Truck tire was still an understatement. Her muscle pulsed with an invisible tick-tick, like a heart pushing the river. 13. The wood cracked loud and dry. The camera on my chest shook. I wanted to cut to a close-up, but there were no cuts. A real story doesn't get edited in the middle of death. I clenched my jaw until I heard my joints. I thought about the statistics that say attacks on people are rare, and felt that statistics become a joke when the world decides to test just one body, yours. 12. The river became smooth, unsettlingly smooth. No insects, no splashes. This silence is the sound that anyone who lives here learns to respect, the silence before the decision. The anaconda isn't a movie, it's a calculation. Her calculation ended at 12. 11. For a moment I saw myself from the outside like a spectator. The thumbnail with the red timer, my face pale with fear. The phrase, "We had 60 seconds to live." And I realized the last thing I needed to be honest about. Admitting that, if I survive, it wasn't because I was a hero. It was because two wills, one human and one ancient, decided not to collide. 10. The edge swallowed 2 more fingers of water. This is the second that makes the audience sit up from the couch. I whispered, "If it stays, she'll flip us. If we react wrong, she'll break us." Raphael replied with a nearly silent, "Let her think she's won." 9. I let my body go. It seems crazy, but I did. I gave weight to the center like a compliant sack of sand, emptied my chest, lowered my chin. The canoe thanked me with a slight straightening. The river licked my knee now, cold that burns. 8. The tail searched for the edge again, a point of leverage. I took my hand off, like giving space in an argument for the other to tire. Her skin scraped the wood and made a sound like glass under cloth. A mosquito landed on my ear, and I didn't dare swat it. 7. Raphael made the riskiest gesture of the morning. A touch of his nail on the hull below the waterline, just enough to create a small swirl. A signal for the current to take the tip of the tail away from the edge. It wasn't force, it was suggestion. The water obeyed in a shy whirlpool. 6. The torque reduced, not much. Enough for the wood to sigh. I felt the hull remember who it was, a whole piece, not 2 parts about to break. A heron cried in the distance like a siren. I took that sound and inserted it into the narrative because the American brain associates sirens with "it's serious now." It was serious. 5. I spoke to the camera without moving my lips. If it falls, it becomes hyperbolic. If it stays, it becomes proof. The river answered with bubbles coming from below, not from the edge. The pressure shifted a little to the middle of the canoe. New strategy. I bit my tongue so I wouldn't bleed into the river. 4. The edge rose half a finger. I didn't celebrate. The whole thing trembled like steel cable under load. Raphael, still not blinking, said, "She's going to test the bow." And as if on cue, the weight suddenly shifted forward. The canoe dipped its nose and then jolted back. My stomach stayed in the air for a frame. 3. The decision. Either everything or nothing. I pushed my hip 2 fingers back. Raphael pulled his chest back a finger to the center, and the water took a chunk out of my boot. Her body creaked like stretched leather. I felt the river bite my heel. 2. I heard the sound I'll never forget, the dry plop of a suction releasing, not from the mouth, from the curve of her body leaving the wood. It wasn't defeat, it was recalculated. The pressure loosened a third. The canoe gained a microscopic breath. 1. The world fit into a transparent bubble that rose, burst, and gave me back my hearing. The buzzing returned, the birds came back, the jungle started breathing again. Her embrace loosened for real. The edge released the last water like a tear of iron. I didn't move a muscle. 0. Nothing flipped, nothing broke. The hull cried one more crack, this time like a spine clicking back into place. The colossal body slid from the bow to the middle, then disappeared below with the same deadly courtesy with which it arrived. The surface closed without drama, just a ring of brown expanding, taking our courage with it. So I stayed a few seconds without processing that I was alive. The timer in my head dug silence. The camera on my chest kept recording. I felt the warmth of the processor like fever. "Jason," Raphael said, "you speak now, but speak quietly." I breathed and said the phrase that sticks with the American audience. We weren't spared, we were measured, and today, we passed. The canoe still trembled, as if remembering the hand that almost broke it. I wanted to stand up, but my legs had turned to memory. "Will she come back?" I asked. Raphael looked at the water with a respect that doesn't fit in a video. "If you forget that the water rules, she'll come back." It was then that I saw, about 15 meters away, a trail that wasn't from a fish or a trunk, a line too straight, too wide, cutting through the Solimois toward a curve of shadow. It wasn't a retreat, it was a patrol. And in that look, I understood that our story hadn't yet reached the climax the algorithm demands at the end of the segment. I lifted my chin by a centimeter and spoke to anyone who was and still would be on the other side of the screen. If you thought it was over, hold your breath one more time. The surface made a crease, the bow swayed, and something heavy struck beneath the canoe with the intent to remind who rules. The video got its final punch. The deep sound, the short leap, the screen shaking, and the cut to darkness. When the strike came from below, I felt it before I heard it. It was as if someone had struck a padded hammer at the center of the canoe, not a crash, but an impact that rose through the bone. The video shook with a short jolt. I understood the message. She hadn't left. She had just changed tactics. She's restarted the game, I thought, and the fear came with a metallic taste in my mouth. 90. I restarted the count not just for the camera, but for my body to obey my brain. Raphael gave me a brief glance. It wasn't reproach, it was calculation. The anaconda began pushing from below, testing the keel like an ancient hand searching for a flaw. Each push repositioned our center of gravity by a centimeter, as if the boat were being tuned to the tone of disaster. 87. The water bit the edge and spat it back. The canoe cried with a thin crack. I knew the viewer on the other side of the screen needed palpable truth, so I described it plainly. If she finds the edge from below, we flip without warning. This is how you lose a life, in the instant between almost and already gone. I felt the camera on my chest heat up. The continuous recording is another risk, a weight that pulls, but it's also the proof that we were here. 83. The surface for a second became glass. A large bubble rose and burst silently. I didn't see the head, just an S shape that traced through the brown of the Solimois and disappeared. Raphael slowly dipped his hand into the water and, without touching her skin, stirred the liquid blade to break an invisible vacuum. She sticks her body and creates suction, If she gets leverage, it's over. 79. The next impulse came at an angle, as if the force rose from the depths, ran beneath us, and came out a hand's breadth from the bow. The canoe dipped its nose down, submerged, and the world split into two tones, brown and breathing. My teeth chattered without sound. Another smaller strike, like a test. The animal's intelligence was mathematical press. Feel the response, recalculate. 74. The dilemma split me in two. Either release weight to relieve and lose the camera, the emergency kit, the batteries, the proof, or hold on to everything and risk flipping with the load. There was no perfect decision. If I let go of the backpack, I save my life and lose the story. If I hold on, I might lose both. I spoke softly, and the raw truth entered the video like a blade. 71. Raphael nodded with his eye toward my heavy backpack against the edge. Just the glance, no abrupt gesture. I understood. I pulled the strap millimeter by millimeter until gravity completed the task and it came to the center. It seemed like nothing, a small gesture. It was everything. The hull thanked me with a different creak, a deep one, like something recovering a piece of itself. 68. The water's response was immediate, strong lateral pressure from right to left. I almost flipped instinctively, but the training spoke louder. I lowered my chest, pressed my elbow to my knee, and became liquid weight. The edge wet my forearm, and I felt the river like the cold skin of an animal. A smell of ancient mud rose thick, with a background of rust and decaying roots. 64. A long shadow passed beneath us, a dark ghost, slow, deliberate. My brain screamed, "Stick, stick, stick to the center," and my muscles obeyed. The machete on Raphael's lap didn't move even a finger. The blade was there like a promise and a message, not as a threat. "If it rises, she squeezes," he whispered. 60. The internal clock struck the same second. A third push, this one drier, hit the keel and moved us half a meter. That's when I understood her game completely. She didn't just want to flip us. She wanted to put us where the bottom grabs the canoe. A meter ahead, an invisible sandbank made the water roar underneath, almost inaudible. If we touched there, we'd lose maneuverability. Then it would be an easy disaster. 56. I gave a simple phrase to the camera. "She's guiding us." I admitted to myself and to those watching, I control nothing here. Humility is the extra plank the hull needs. Raphael gave a rudder-like tap with his pinky, a gesture as small as it was decisive, and the bull veered 2 fingers away from the trap. 52. A leather-like brush passed beneath my heel, and the canoe sang a high-pitched tone. I almost cried reflexively, not from fear, but from an excess of life in my body. "Hold on," I said without voice. The pressure released a thread, and the surface showed for an instant a mosaic of light on her back. Olive-green oval spots that looked like closed eyes. I tried not to personify it. I tried just to see. 49. The audience needs revelation. I gave them the impossible decision. I pulled the battery case to the center and decided that if another strike came from below, I would throw the lens bag into the river. It hurt just to think about it, but no story is worth life, and nothing goes viral if the person filming doesn't come back. 46. The river pulled us backward. The bow entered a gentle current, just enough to steal control. That's it. She was trying to put us in the line of greatest drag. I understood late, but I understood. "Left. Now," I said. Raphael moved his wrist 1 centimeter. The canoe obeyed, the current missed its grip, and we got wet without getting caught. 42. The world narrowed into the sound of the wood's veins. Each fiber, a voice. The pressure returned. 4th strike, not below, but to the flank, like an athlete's elbow. The edge rose, fell, rose. A cold splash exploded in my ear. I held back the urge to shake. In the video, my eye trembled for a frame, enough for the viewer to feel that it's truly human. 39. I promised the camera, if I survive, I'll post this without cutting. The commitment gave me focus. Focus also weighs. The anaconda, perhaps tired of the tactic, changed the pattern. I felt her body scraping the keel from bow to stern, as if reading the boat with muscular braille. It gave me fear and respect, a different intelligence, calibrating wood and man. 35. The chance appeared like air after a dive, suddenly. The pressure disappeared. It didn't give way, it disappeared. A soft vacuum, and for a second, the canoe floated in its own silence. "Now?" I asked with my eye. Raphael answered with his eyebrow. "Now." I shifted the weight to the center. He pushed the stern with his heel, and the current caught us from the side we wanted. The anaconda followed, but not embraced parallel, vigilant. 32. The Solimois opened a path so straight it seemed like a runway. We continued without the engine, without noise, just a quiet prayer in our bones. I spoke more to myself than to the camera. Don't provoke, don't flee, follow. The shadow beside us submerged slowly and rose ahead like a guardian. 28. The sound of birds returned an octave. Mosquitoes resumed their electric chorus. Life hit play. Her body made the final curve together and then disappeared into the depths with a whirlpool that spun twice, like a signature. 25. I didn't celebrate, I just breathed. My chest burned. The video captured my entire sigh, and this, paradoxically, is the best hook, when silence says more than any scream. Raphael laid his hand on the hull, thanking in his way. "The water let go," he said. 22. I looked at the camera and spoke, still quietly. If this reached you, it's because someone here understood that respect is also a survival tool. I wanted to say more, but the bow hit something invisible, a submerged trunk, and the shock made the image tremble beautifully. It was the cut I needed to close the block. Abrupt truth, held breath, the promise of an answer. 20. The canoe stabilized. The river seemed to accept our presence again. I kept the count in the pocket of my soul and let only the sound of the Solimois take care of the ending. There was no music, no effect, just wood, water, air, and two bodies too small for the scene. It was enough. It was everything. The narrow corridor appeared out of nowhere, two tongues of vegetation closing the river, until it became a brown funnel. The current pulled the bow as if someone were holding an invisible thread tied to our hull. I didn't want the motor. The motor vibrates. Vibration calls mass. Mass calls tragedy. No noise, I said, although my breath was already an out-of-tune engine. Raphael shook his head, seeing the same thing I did. There was no margin for error here. Here the water chooses. I heard it first, then saw it. A rough growl from below, not from an animal, but from the river dragging a trunk. The canoe hiccuped and went. The speed increased without asking permission. "No paddling," Raphael whispered. "Who paddles here paddles against their own grave." I gripped the seat with both hands and felt the wood, warm, alive, as if it remembered the recent embrace that almost broke its spine. The camera on my chest weighed down. Sweat fell inside my shirt and stung my eyes. The screen showed brown, 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 until a shape cut through the water on the left. It wasn't what I wanted to see. It was her. Again. Parallel to our shadow, the anaconda reappeared like a living rail accompanying our silent race, not embraced, escorting. Her muscles traced maps beneath her skin. I thought of my promises, the truth I owed to those watching. She doesn't attack for spectacle, she calculates, and we're part of her calculation. The current pushed us toward the right bank, where roots came out of the ground like ribs. One of them jutted out like an iron hook, ready to bite the hull if we got a finger closer. "Left," I whispered. Raphael shifted only his hip weight. The canoe obeyed by a finger. A finger today was worth a life. That's when the rules of the world changed. A quick movement ahead, a glint of a claw, a short splash, and the Solimois became a court. A large crocodile cut through the surface, opened its mouth in a line of knives, and disappeared, reappearing in front of us like a living obstacle. It wasn't a rival to the anaconda, it was the whole deck against us. The jungle doesn't combine attacks, it overlies them. "Decide," Raphael's look said. I understood the cruel math. If we shift weight to avoid the crocodile, we touch the root and break the hull. If we hold the line, we pass over the beast and give room for the anaconda to close underneath. Any of these choices could turn into a posthumous title. I exhaled and said the only thing I still controlled: we prefer wood to teeth. In other words, better scrape root than cross jaws. Raphael shifted 2 fingers to the right with a knee tap that was worth an entire manual. The crocodile dove, the water rose in a dome, and we passed. licking the bubble like a lost bullet licking a wall. The root struck the hull with a violin-like broken squeal. I felt the sound in my jaw. A trickle of water entered and ran through my fingers. "Follow," Raphael said, the hardest word to say when everything is asking to stop. We followed. The anaconda dove, disappeared, and reappeared 2 meters ahead, as if drawing the only safe line for us in that funnel. That's when her body crossed underneath the bow. Not embracing, crossing. A living bridge beneath us. The canoe rose just enough to skip the last root's tooth that was waiting for our belly. I didn't believe it. I almost broke into tears. The anaconda lifted us as if pulling a leaf from a whirlwind and letting it go a second later. I didn't finish. I didn't know the verb. Saved, used, moved. The current answered for me, opening the narrow corridor to a wider section where the river spread its shoulders. The noise dropped a tone. The trees stopped looking like walls and started looking like trees again. Raphael placed his hand in the water, a gesture of gratitude that needed no words. The anaconda stopped beside us, half her body out of the water, her head a meter from the edge. Her eyes, not glassy, not demonic, but ancient eyes that read pressure, rhythm, temperature. I looked, yes, with respect. And I spoke softly to the camera and to myself. We made it, not because we won, because we were allowed. She sank slowly, leaving a slow figure 8 on the surface that faded like anointment. The silence that remained wasn't empty. It was a rasping blessing. The Solimois breathed again. I breathed with it. The timer in my head stopped screaming. It was the first time I dared look back. The narrow corridor already seemed like a bad memory. The canoe slid over more open water, and a tiny breeze made the shirt cling less to my body. I rested my neck on the seat, closed my eyes for a second, and heard the crack. Small, definitive. The wooden plank under my foot had cracked. The previous embrace was charging interest. Without thinking, I moved the heavy backpack to the center and braced my foot with my elbow, turning my body into an improvised crossbar. "A little more," I said. Raphael nodded. "A little more, and we'll fix it on land." The whole world fits in this silly promise. I knew the video needed one last frame, not an artifice, but the truth. The camera was hot like fever. I breathed and pressed my chin to the lens for a second, smelling plastic and dry salt. If anyone sees this from the subway, the sofa, the office, understand, what keeps us alive isn't shouting, isn't strength. It's knowing when to give 2 fingers at the right time. The bank appeared like salvation, a tongue of sand and low roots, a place to take the water off the boat and patch up dignity. We approached carefully. I jumped out with the GoPro in hand, knees weak, and turned to get the last image of the water. I wanted the signature, the ring, the goodbye. The river offered it. A perfect circle opened 10 meters ahead of us, like a finger tracing the outline of a secret. In the center, the olive-green skin touched the sun for a second and disappeared. I lowered the camera, not out of fear of losing it, out of respect to keep it. Raphael placed the machete on the ground, blade to the river, handled to us the opposite of what you do when threatening. "Thank you," he said without a voice. I repeated, half man, half child, half soldier, without a war. Only then did the body realize what the heart had been pretending not to know. My hands trembled, as if still holding the hull to avoid flipping. My chest ached. My stomach remembered the metallic taste of the decision. I laughed silently. I cried without water. When the engine finally hummed softly and the canoe began to move away, I grabbed the phone and wrote the title in the Notes app, without a question mark, without embellishment. She tangled in our canoe. We had 60 seconds to live. It wasn't advertising. It was real counting. 60 that turned into 120. That became a story because someone, animal, river, man, chose not to tighten another degree. On the way back, the Solimois stayed behind like an animal going back to sleep. I mentally reviewed each micro-decision, every finger of adjustment, every silence that was worth more than any shout. I understood that what truly goes viral isn't the promise of death, it's the precision of life on the razor's edge. Arriving at base, I sat on the wooden floor, leaned my back against the mortar, and let the camera cool in my lap. I looked at the first frame, the last frame. I didn't cut anything in between. I took a deep breath, and for the first time that day, smiled. "We made it," I said. "Today we made it. We made..." And I let the river respond with a sound only those who were there would recognize. The sound of something immense moving away, not out of fear, but out of decision. Subscribe for part 2. What the river did next will change how you see the Amazon.